From one week to the next, I never quite know what exactly I'm going to talk about. Sometimes I have a fair idea, like I have a shape, and sometimes during the week I would take notes, things that matter to me, and I think I'd love to share that on the podcast. But there's still a spontaneity about it. And when I come into my studio, and I've been doing this every week since, I think, March of 2020. So it's 3 years and 9 months. And I don't think I've ever missed a single week. Even when I was in hospital, I would still go to, I'd go down the corridor with my phone and stand at a window and do the podcast. And I think that the reason I do it, it's not just because I love you. Like, I'm very grateful that you listen. And I enjoy the sense of connection or communication I get when I'm talking to you. But I think I really do it for myself. I think that without realizing it in the beginning, it became for me a kind of a retreat. It started when I was on, the COVID lockdown. And I thought, this would benefit me personally, just to measure how you're feeling in your heart once a week. I think that one of the huge important things in life is to have a kind of a solitude, have a kind of a space within your own mind where you can go and feel calm and feel safe and reflect on the joy and the beauty of being alive. But you also need to connect with other people so that you can measure what's going on inside. Like, if I'm having certain ideas within my own mind, I'm reflecting on the nature of life, be it positive or negatively. I can only measure it really when I speak it out to somebody else. You can see the way it affects somebody if you're depressed. You can get into a hugely negative way of thinking about yourself. And you can punish yourself from one end of the day to the other with negative ideas, negative thoughts. And it's like somebody is abusing you inside in your head and being negative to you, and there's nobody to defend you. And it's only when you speak to somebody else on the outside, you sit with a family member or somebody that you love and trust, or a therapist, and you share with them what's going on inside in your head. And without judging you, they can, by just loving you and listening to you, they can help you realize that what's going on in your head is not the best thing that could be going on in there. Particularly if you're being over negative about yourself. I experienced that myself in therapy, going to the therapist, and it's not that the therapist judges you. It's almost like she becomes a sounding board. And when you speak out things that are going on inside your head, you actually, it's strange because you can kind of realize yourself that they're not right. It's like we have an inbuilt detector in our own consciousness that tells us what is a good path and what's not a good path, what's a healthy path and what's not a healthy path. And it activates itself when we're talking to somebody else. You know the phrase people use sometimes that say, do you hear yourself talking? So somebody is chatting in a restaurant and they're telling the other person something ludicrous, right? And the other person says, do you hear yourself talking? Meaning, if you could hear yourself talking, you'd know you were talking shite. So we have this inbuilt detector that kind of balances us and separates ridiculous notions that we might have from things that are healthy. And it comes into play when we're talking to somebody else. And one of the hugely important places that we use it is when we go to the therapist. Because as I say, with the therapist, the therapist is non-judgmental and non-directive. So they're going to be sitting there not judging you and not trying to, manipulate your meanderings towards a particular direction or towards a particular insight. They're going to wait for you to find the insight. They're not going to have a secret agenda, or at least they shouldn't have. That they're hoping you'll get to some insight which they've already figured is a good insight. No, they're being non-judgmental and they're being non-directive. So they're listening to you, and that's really what they're being paid for, is to listen. And it's a very focused listening. I mean, there are people in your family who can listen and love you. But it doesn't mean that therapy is a bad idea or that you don't need it. There's the bell going. We're going to have to live with that bell now because I have my clock fixed. It's a beautiful little Edwardian clock, and you wind it up and it goes like that. And I'm very fond of it, so I don't know how to turn it off. It's distracted me as well because I was trying to talk about how therapy can be a very good thing, even if you have friends or family who love you. But going to therapy, it's like you're treating yourself. You're treating yourself to this professional who is listening and who is listening professionally. And there's no judgment and there's no direction. It's all going to be about you, talking about how you're feeling. And what happens in that, in my experience, is that most of the time when you say things out loud to the therapist, you realize what's healthy and what's not healthy. You'd say something like, sometimes I feel I'm really stupid. And you say it out loud to the therapist and she's sitting there looking at you. And you realize it's stupid to be thinking you're stupid. It's not healthy. There's no basis for thinking you're stupid. Or feeling unloved. Or being over-judgmental about your own life. Being judgmentally negative about everything you do. They're the kind of things that cripple somebody when they're depressed. And it's amazing how therapy releases somebody from that. And it's amazing how much of therapy is simply about listening. And that the release you feel is based simply on the fact that you're speaking the things out loud yourself. You're sharing things that are real kind of hidden secrets in your own heart. And as you speak them, they either grow as ideas if they're healthy, or they wither because they can't survive the light of day. It's funny. And that's enough said about therapy, but the same thing happens in spiritual direction. And it is It is you cannot follow any religious tradition on your own. Whether it's Jewish or Christian, Muslim or Buddhist, you can't just do it on your own. You'll need somebody on the outside who kind of is the go-to person, like a spiritual mentor. It doesn't mean that you have to use them like a therapist, but if there's somebody who knows that you're going through a journey spiritually, might be a priest or a nun, it might be your cousin, it might be somebody down the road, it might be some young wise person who's studying philosophy, but to share, and that'd be the best word I'd have for spiritual direction. It's like sharing the stuff that's going on in your head about religion or about spirituality. And again, you know when you say it that it's healthy or not healthy. If you were talking to somebody and you said something like, I always feel that people who have died, I always feel they're very close to me. Well, you'd know when you say it that that's healthy. You mightn't understand why it's healthy. You mightn't even understand why you're saying it. But you know you're on the right track. And just by saying it to somebody, you're able to judge. You have a kind of a detector inside yourself. So I think that conversations about faith are very helpful. You know, they're not helpful if people end up having arguments. If you end up talking religion and you're always talking about why everybody else is wrong, that doesn't do any good. But I think what does enormous benefit is where people they give testimony of what's going on in their heart. And it can happen at a dinner table. I mean, it's just not fashionable. But I've noticed over many years that if I am at a dinner table and I say something like, talking about my illness, let's say, and if I mentioned the fact that, well, I get huge consolation from prayer. I've said that. I get huge consolation from prayer when I'm in hospital. That will silence a room. I've seen it. And people will react to it positively, affirmatively, immediately, because there's something true about it. And the very fact that you say it tests the truth of it. And that's amazing. And if you say something like that's off the wall, you know when you're saying it that it's off the wall. And I won't give an example of that because in spiritual terms, I don't know if there's anything off the wall. I mean, spirituality is such an open, mysterious and beautiful world. You know, you're exploring the kind of unnameable dimensions of your own heart. So the only time then kind of that sort of faith conversation becomes problematic is when you start talking not about what you're experiencing on the inside, but when you start talking about maybe the ideas that you don't agree with. Well, I don't think I agree with Islam because of the following, or I don't think I agree with Christianity because of the following. That doesn't help. And in fact, one of the great precepts in Buddhism is never to speak negatively about another religion, ever. It's not speaking negatively about religion is just destructive, but sharing your faith and even sharing your non-faith. You know, Like, again, supposing I'm at the dinner table and I say to the guests, well, I get great consolation from prayer when I'm ill. Can you imagine some other person responding to me and saying, you're very lucky because sometimes I have ill health and I find it very difficult that I can't believe in anything. Now those are really beautiful conversations if you can have them, if you can nudge your way towards that kind of sharing. Because faith is such a delicate, mysterious thing. But there's no doubt that sharing, it puts into operation a kind of a detector within yourself, and you can hear yourself talking. And so when you're at the dinner table and you're talking faith, or when you're just sitting around having a chat with somebody and you're talking faith, you know, what's your faith? What do you believe in? Not like ideas that you subscribe to, but what do you really believe? When you do it, you kind of automatically, this detector within you is able to affirm that's a good, healthy thing you're saying. So you know more about your faith the more you speak about your faith. And there's a great word in Christianity to talk about the kerygma. The kerygma is to proclaim the gospel. You know, proclaim the good news. And maybe over centuries or millennia, we've twisted and distorted that idea to an idea of forcing conformity to certain Christian ideas. You know, that it's about kind of converting people, or the kerygma, the evangelical, is the person who's out there trying to, you know, twist everybody's arm to become Christians. But I think it had in its root, in its origin, a very, very more personal, deeper root. It was about sharing your faith. You know, you can see it in the creed. You know, when people say, I believe in God. And they say it in all the Christian churches in different denominations, maybe slight variations, but essentially it's usually said at a divine service or at a Mass, a Eucharist, I believe in God, the Father, Almighty, and it goes through details, but it goes through it like as beliefs. You know, it's expressing that you personally believe that in yourself. And again, you can see how in history we've twisted it to mean something like, these are ideas and you have to have these ideas to be in the club called Christians. So for me, it's about just a personal sharing of my faith, which is like, it's like how I feel in the morning. Or when do I feel the Spirit of God is in me? Or where do I recognize the Spirit of God? You know, do I experience the world at a surface level? And do I experience the world only from my point of view and how it feeds me, or how I benefit from being in the world? So there are two fundamental ways, I think, that would make me secular. And the opposite of those two are the two things which make me religious. Number one, that when I see the dawn, when I see sunset, when I see the ocean, when I see the mountain, when I think about the cosmos, when I think about the infinite beauty of the cosmic reality that I'm part of, I sense a depth in it, which is a loving depth, a conscious depth, a depth, a ground of being that is reaching towards me, shaping me lovingly. And I try to accept that or see that even when I'm sick or when I have some health issue or when I'm aging. Aging is the ultimate, illness. And so when I'm aging, I'm also seeing that the aging is something beautiful that's happening to me. And then I'm beginning to even see death as ultimately something beautiful. There's something in the moment of death which is like confronting your deepest self by confronting this idea. So I'm thinking like this self that I have that sees depth in the universe, depth, a hidden depth beyond the sunset. And also that I'm not in this world for the way that I can use that. It's just from my narrow viewpoint. The whole cosmos serves me. Where will I get my dinner? Where will I get my money? Where will I get my pleasure? But to shift that to some sense that the real mystery is the universe is revealing itself, unfolding. And it's unfolding and unknotting itself gracefully, beautifully, elegantly, because within it is the heart of God. It's almost like the truth that's coming through you is more real than you. And when you speak it, you will be able to discern its truth, as opposed to something coming through you that's false. And you know as you say it, it's false. Like we all know what a lie is. I tell you the truth. I say, yes, I have been here all morning. You say it and it's the truth. Or you say, oh no, I only came a few moments ago. You know you're telling a lie. But that same distinction, I think, is available at a much deeper level when we're philosophizing, when we're talking about how we feel about our beloved, when we're talking about our children, when we're talking about politics. When we talk from the heart, we know when it's true. And sometimes people say, I don't know what I'm going to say until I say it. And sometimes it feels like the truth in what you say controls you. It's like it just gets said. And you let it out, it comes through you, and it's said, and it's the truth, and you know it's the truth. So it's not like that you're controlling the truth. It's almost sometimes like the truth has to express itself. And when you speak, when you proclaim your truth, you're like serving the truth. It's why the Christians talk about the Logos, The Logos is the Word of God. So there's a certain way whereby, when people were speaking, bearing witness to their faith in Christ, the kerygma, they were allowing the truth to come through them. St. Paul says, it's not me who speaks now, it's Christ who speaks in me. It's about the best way to put it. And all those reasons are very much part of the pleasure I get by doing the podcast. So that's what you're giving me. I think what I'm giving you is a sense of how this works. It's like, I hope I'm teaching you how to communicate with the people that are close to you, with the people that matter to you, how to communicate the hidden things of the heart, the things that are in your heart, the beautiful things in your heart, the sense of love that you have for other people, the sense of joy that you have at being alive, the sense of gratefulness that you have. They're all human experiences. And probably what I'm doing is kind of showing you how that works for me, how I share all that by speaking from the heart. And how when you speak from the heart, there's a wonderful inbuilt detection mechanism. And so you speak something out and you know that it's true, or you know that it's false. So ultimately it's only the truth can survive. Because I say a lie, or I tell an untruth, I just know that it's not true. It withers. The words fall apart in the air and die. Whereas if I say something that's true, I know it's true. It has a sense of truth which is not coming from my authority. It's almost like, did I say that? Did I really say that? Because it came out. And I think that's close to what people were thinking about when they talked about the Logos. In the beginning was the Word. That Jesus Christ was the Word of God. And when I'm doing this podcast every week, it's like I get an opportunity to share like this in a way that I can use a detector to say I'm speaking falsely, or maybe something is truthful. And most of the time, even though I do some preparation, there's a way that the podcast takes on a life of its own, because the truth will out. And that's a miraculous thing. Like, there was a thing I was thinking about this week. This is All Souls Day. Yesterday was All Saints Day, and today is All Souls Day. And I remember when I was young, my mother would always make sure to clean the kitchen on the night before All Souls Day. And she would put a jug of water on the table. Nothing else would be on the table in the kitchen. On other nights, that table could be full of stuff for the morning. But not on All Souls Eve. She would put a big jug of water, she'd tidy up the range, the fire, and she'd go to bed. And when I asked her as a child, why do you put out the water? She said she put it out for the souls in purgatory who could come back and take a drink. Now you may think it's a fairly crude, simplistic, literal idea of souls in purgatory coming back to have a glass of water, and I agree. But she didn't mean it literally. Most people who use religious language don't even think literally about what they're saying. They mean it in its deepest metaphoric reality. So that when you talk about the souls coming back for the ritual drink that you've left on the table, it's like a prayer. It's like you're leaving something there as an offering to those who have gone before us, marked with the sign of faith. I can't explain how beautiful it seems to me. I can't explain how close I feel to my mother and to all the wonderful, beautiful people I've met in my life who have passed away, marked with the sign of faith, and I feel close to them on All Souls' Day. And it's like my heart offers them joy and blessings that they may have eternal rest. And you know, when I think that you say something like, may they have eternal rest, if you think about the words open up a concept and then you fall into it yourself, because the minute I say, may they have eternal rest, I feel I want eternal rest too. So they will pray for me as I pray for them. So then we seem to be on this journey that maybe those who have gone before me, marked with the sign of faith, are still on a journey. It's a metaphor, but there's something about it feels true. There's something about it that is bigger than me. If I try to say that the words are my words and I can control language, then I become very reductive of the big mysteries in any religion. And I begin to think like, well, I don't understand it, so it's not true. But the other way of thinking about truth in spoken words is that it contains a truth that I may not understand, but I instinctively know it's true. And that's all I can say on this day, All Souls' Day, when I think about those who have passed on. And again, I know that it's more normal now to talk about the dead. It's more normal when somebody's dying, they say, he's dying. And then when the moment comes, they phone up the relatives and say, your father died at 4 o'clock. And there's a tendency in the caring professions to go that road of reality, so that we're dealing with reality, you know. Man has died. No airy-fairy stuff. And I can accept that may be very helpful and useful within terms of how we grieve and mourn, but at the same time, and I don't know why, I feel that it's, for me, hugely important to think that somebody has passed away, that in this present reality, in this manifestation of being here now, that I'm experiencing, that you're experiencing, it's not an absolute realm. It's not like I'm always going to be here alive. But going from it doesn't mean I suddenly become nothing. And I get great consolation out of thinking, not that people who have passed away are, sitting in some big room waiting for eternity to begin. Nor do I think about it in terms of linear time. I don't imagine when I go to a funeral that, well, there's Seamus and he died and he's in the coffin, so, tomorrow morning he'll start in heaven. Because whatever heaven is, I sense it's a dimension of this reality. So to say somebody is going to heaven or has passed away, it doesn't mean that they've gone to some heaven in linear time. The word afterlife implies linear time. People would say, when I say I'm religious, people say, and do you believe in the afterlife? And I say, no, I believe in this life. But I believe that this life has more dimensions to it than the surface. It may have dimensions of suffering and purification. It may have dimensions of bliss and union with God that I wouldn't know anything about. So it may have a dimension of heaven, which is what Jesus was saying, like, the kingdom of God is now. It's here now. So being here now, which is the phrase I always use, means to be here at the surface. But it means to be here deeply. It means to walk more deeply on the earth, to stand more deeply, to breathe more deeply. It means to breathe in and inhale heaven, the dimension of unspeakable light, love, completion, that is already here, is already within you, and which will grow and shine even as your body withers. And so the body is like changing, being transformed. And in the moment of death, we have this encounter. Not annihilation, not nihilism. And I don't know what it is. And yet I believe it. I believe it as something that is affirmed by everything good and blessed and loving in my life. An instinct, a faith, that when I think about my mother, or I think about other people who have passed away, friends, when I remember the intimacy or the love that was between us, it's as if that energy was still within me. It's as if they haven't gone away. They have just passed into a different realm. A realm from which there is no return. A transformative realm, like, to say the in-between time in Buddhism, the bardo, or a purgatory, a place of purgation awakening, not torture and suffering, but a fuller awakening to the immeasurable light of God's presence. A glorious journey. Metaphorically, you'd say a journey home, because home is where we already are. We come from home, we go to home. And here we are in between. And in death we return, become clean-hearted and open to the immeasurable light of God. Because in the moment of death, we're going to let go of everything that's egotistical. In the way that the body and the mind are formed into an identity that has linear time, that has material reality. Everything that constitutes us psychologically and physically, we will let go of. Is there anything left? To say there's nothing left would be to leave me thinking that life is meaningless, that there is no big centre, unfathomable. But there is. I don't know it, but I believe it. And when I say it, and the words come out of me, I'm at a funeral, and I shake hands with the brother grieving, and I say to him, the light of heaven be on Seamus. The light of heaven, take him home. And there's something, I just know the words are true. I don't understand how they're true. But they have truth in them, and it comes out. I hear the word. Did I speak that? Did I say that? May the light of heaven draw him home. It's a metaphor. I don't know what it means, but I know it's true. This is the great anchor that language has. It's no good if it's just inside me. It's no good if I'm just in my own world, alone. I need to share it. I need to go to the funeral. I need to grieve with everybody else. I need to say it and touch and shake hands with the bereaved. I'm sorry for your trouble. I feel better when I say it. I go to the funeral, I say it, and I feel better. I'm sorry for your trouble. May he rest in peace. I feel healed in myself, because even though I'm still here in this material world, I'm still here on the surface of reality. Okay. But everything is telling me that this moment of being here now has a depth to it that is unfathomable, beautiful. It's like being loved. It's like a mother holding me in this moment. And I know instinctively that that's true. So what to do? Well, all I can think of is that you go inside your own heart and you open the door, what's in there, and you speak, and your Father, who knows everything in secret, hears you. So this is the space of prayer, and I've spoken about it many times. It's a space in your heart which is consoling and calming and beautiful. And in that space, you will get realizations. There will be things dawn on you about wisdom, about the nature of reality, about the shortness of life, about the beauty of love. They'll just dawn on you. About the futility of hatred, for example, the futility of anger. When you're in the privacy of your own heart, when you're in that room where you talk to God, You know that anger is useless. It's kind of an infallible wisdom that's in all of us to know the truth. And the way you test it is by sharing it with somebody else, because when you share it with somebody else, you will hear yourself saying it. You will hear it being said almost like the truth coming through you. Or alternatively, you'll hear yourself talking nonsense. You say something out loud about what's in your heart. You know when it's a lie. Oh, I was here all morning. You know that's a lie if you weren't. But also when it comes to faith. You know, even if you said something like, yes, I believe in the afterlife. Oh, yes, I do, of course. You'd know if it wasn't true. Maybe you don't believe in the afterlife. So you're in a conversation and somebody says, oh, I get a great amount of peace and consolation from my religious faith when I'm suffering from ill health. And you're there listening to it, and because you don't share that person's experience, so you say the truth. You say, gosh, you know, I don't get any consolation from religion at all. I think you'll feel the truth of it. You'll feel the truth coming through you all the time. It's the Logos. It's the Word of God gets spoken. That which comes from God. So it's like really interesting that you need to go into the heart and pray, and yet you need to share with somebody else what's going on in there. And when you share with somebody else what's going on in there, there's an inbuilt detector of truth. You will know when you're speaking the truth. And it will feel not like you're speaking the truth, but like the truth is speaking you. It's like you will say things, you will share from the heart in ways that feel almost like they're inevitable. It's like you couldn't live with yourself if you didn't say this. That's how strong the truth is. And the only way to access it is when you are alone and you go into that space in your own heart and listen. You listen in silence. You listen to the silence as the language of God. And the more you do it, the more you find yourself speaking it, sharing with other people what's going on in there. So you become a Christian. You become like, you know, the kerygma, the preaching or the evangelical speaking of the good news is something that is happening in you. You're sharing. It's not you that speak, but Christ who speak in you. You're sharing. You're becoming a Christian. Not by adhering to a church, not by going to Mass regularly or following some sort of set of regulations, but simply in your heart. In your heart is opening. You listen alone in a prayerful space. Your heart is opening. And then what do? You share that It's like sharing the joy. It's like telling somebody that you're full of happiness, you know. Somebody says to you, how are you feeling today? And you say, I feel so grateful today to be alive. You're sharing. You're becoming a Christian when you say that. You're entering into the cosmic Christ, the kind of transformed universe. Or rather, the transformed universe is now entering into your soul and body and transforming you. You're allowing the truth, the Word of God, to change you. I'll tell you one last thing before I go. And this has just been, I suppose, a rambling meditation on All Souls Day. It's such a special time for me. I don't know why. It's a time I deeply feel the communion of saints and the communion of all the people that I loved and miss. Bernard and Mary and John and Freddie and Oliver and Bernadette and Nancy and so many more people that I have been close to and loved and feel that they have gone before me, marked with the sign of faith. They've gone into the strange abyss and darkness of death. Do I think that they are nothing? No. I feel my heart holds them. I feel they hold me. I said to somebody one time, a woman who had lost somebody, a brother, and she said to me, how do I pray? And I said, well, I don't know how to pray, but maybe visualize him, your brother. Visualize him in front of you and speak to him and say, thank him for all the goodness he did for you in his life. And she did that, and she came back to me a couple of days or weeks later, and she said, that really worked. But she said, the minute I started thanking him, I began to imagine him thanking me for all that I had done for him. And so she had an experience as a visualization of communion with her brother who had passed away. But it was, the visualization was simply predicating a kind of an opening of gratitude. So gratitude was flowing. That was the real dynamic in her heart. Gratitude was flowing for his life. And she felt as if there was gratitude coming back to her. And she felt that as the truth. When she spoke that to me, she didn't say, oh, I guess this is really stupid. No, she didn't. She said it like she meant this really happened. And so I'm the same, and this is a meditation for All Souls Day, and it's like, I don't know the meaning of the metaphor. But I do know that the metaphor comes out of my mouth. And it's like the logos, it's like the word, it's like something has been said. Truth has come into the world sometimes. And to finish up, just I was reading a fella recently. Oh, he was talking about a great fella very early in the church's history, a fella called Maximus the Great, or Maximus the Confessor. And he said that if you look at the Gospels, there's a number of things you can say about Jesus. Number one, he didn't really say much about God as a philosopher might do it. And he didn't write a book. So there's only the stories, which are like Sufi stories from a storyteller. And they all reveal a sense of what's in the heart. And the two fundamental things he actually did show us was about prayer. And he showed us how to pray in two ways. One was the Our Father, how to do that. And the other was in the breaking of bread. And it seems to me that in the Our Father, there's a deep focus on the transcendent God. And in the breaking of bread, there's a deep focus on the people around the table. It's like we need to go inside. We need to speak to the Father in that secret room in the heart. And we also need to break the bread, to share in a community. And the dynamic of the two seem to let the truth out. It seems to reveal itself. I think all history is like that. I think history goes in crooked ways, but I think that it's like the truth is always revealing itself. I am always with you, even to the end of time. You know, that thing we learned as a child from the gospel, but there's something true about it. And I trust in truth. I trust in science. I trust in wisdom. I trust in psychology. I trust in people who are more learned than me. I trust in politics even. And I say that, I suppose, at a time when it's hard to see the good in politics, because in so many places politics is failing, and then it turns into war. And there's horrible war going on in many different places now. And yet I just really trust faith. That in faith, in sharing, in doing our little bit, like praying in solitude and sharing your joy with other people, and listening for the truth as you speak, and always checking yourself. Just know, get used to knowing when you're telling a lie, or when you're telling only 90% of the truth, and try and get to the point where you're telling 100% of the truth all the time. You begin to feel that the truth actually speaks you. It comes through you. It's like, do you know, the more silent you are, the more wiser you get. But also the more wiser you sound. It's kind of amazing. If you go into a conversation and you want to say a whole lot of things, you just come out of it sounding stupid. Sounding like, you're pushing your own agenda. But if you go into a conversation and you listen, then maybe inevitably, the truth sort of comes out of you once or twice. Say but a little and say it well. It's a good feeling, because the feeling you get is like the truth has been said. It wasn't that you have the truth. It's like truth is in the air. It's like all pervasive. And it comes through you and through me and through everybody else. Well, it's also, I suppose, All Souls Day, All Saints Day, the 1st, 2nd of November. For me, it's like winter has begun, the beautiful and wonderful journey into the dark, journey into the solstice, journey towards Christmas, and then coming out the other end of it on St. Bridget's Day. This has all begun. This has all begun now on this day, reflecting on those who have gone before us, marked with the sign of faith. Remembering them, praying for them, praying with them, and experiencing in this present moment, being here now, the ineffable depth of being that is God. So thank you for being here. Bye-bye.